This is Marcus Washington, MTC Media. So Dan Quinn's debut as the Washington Commanders coach wasn't exactly a Disney fairy tale in Washington's 37-20 loss. And there was just so many things that went wrong in week one, starting with the defense that couldn't tackle, couldn't get off the field on third downs. It seemed like Tampa Bay scored every time they touched the ball, even though I know they didn't score every time they touched the ball. And, this was warranted. He could have pulled out the Jim Morris Sr. Diddley Poo press conference. If those who don't know, go look it up. It's pretty funny. But the defense wasn't funny. It just looked like it didn't have any sort of cohesion. And you have to ask yourself the question, for Washington, having a new coaching staff and doing things differently and bringing in so many different players, should preseason have been navigated differently? And I do know, people don't really play in preseason anymore if you have a significant role during the season. It's just one of the things that has changed. But in Washington's case, I think Washington needed to coach it in a way of what was best for Washington. So the defense just did not show up on that side of the ball and was a little disappointed. I think everyone's expect for the defense to be ahead of the offense. And yesterday, I don't think you can argue that either one was ahead of the other. The front office decided that this was going to be what the wide receiving core looks like. And in 2024, you can't have a wide receiving core like this one. Outside of Terry McLaurin, it just seems like the rest of the receivers are more of a specialist. No one can do a little bit of everything to stay out on the field. And it just seems that the wide receiver core was poorly put together, especially after you traded Dotson late in training camp to the Philadelphia Eagles. There need to be a better plan. You just cannot play in today's NFL with an average wide receiving core, and especially when you have a rookie quarterback. So you have a new coaching staff, a below average wide receiver core with a rookie quarterback, and that just seems to be a recipe for disaster. Which you don't want to overreact to week one, but you look at Caleb Williams in Chicago. Did not play well at all. Did not play well at all. Did not play well at all. But the narrative is a little bit different because he does have the wide receiving core. So you're thinking, okay, this gives him a better opportunity to progressively get better in year one, as opposed to year one being a throwaway. And that's the fear, I think, in a way, with Jaden Daniels, is when you see this wide receiving core, unless Kingsbury does something to kind of scheme them open a little bit more, it's going to be tough to see that progression in year one for Jaden Daniels. So again, week one, but it's something to keep an eye on. For Washington, one of the best things that they could get is a consistent running game that doesn't involve Jaden Daniels' legs. And that was the other thing that didn't happen. And again, a lot of this could be a creativity thing, but there's got to be a way to sustain drives. I think there was one drive, and we're talking about when the game was still competitive. There was one drive where they ran the ball a little bit better than the other drives with Robinson. But for the most part, you're going to need help from the running game. You're going to need help from the screen game. You're going to need help from all these things because the aforementioned wide receiving core, you can't throw the ball to open up running lanes. It's just not going to happen. So how do you do the opposite? How do you open up lanes running to open up passing? And again, week one, I'm sure Kingsbury doesn't have anything close to having his entire playbook in yet. And that's the other thing you need to understand is, this thing's going to come in progressions. It's not like they just dropped the book on the table and said, well, read it from cover to cover. It's going to be implemented over time. But hopefully for Washington, the coaching staff learned a lot from yesterday's week one. Now, you do get a reprieve because next week could be a game that you have to treat like the Super Bowl because next week it's the New York Giants. So Washington will, on paper, have a chance to get a win. But for most of all, if you are a Washington fan, what you want to see is progression. And I will say this: this is where the Commanders and the Wizards are in the same position somewhat, because the Wizards didn't get a new ownership group, but they did overturn the front office and the coach and those things. This is not going to happen overnight. And I know no one wants to hear that, because the league, especially NFL, is one of those, you could be 5-12 one year and 12-5 the next. Just look at the NFC South. And so it warps fans into thinking, okay, so what? We're 5-12 last year. Remember, now you can go from 5-12 to 12-5. Don't you read what the NFL always promotes? That's supposed to be part of the beauty of this league. But you have to understand, every situation is not like that. And you might see stuff that reveals more of how the Wizards are trying to progress than what has happened in the NFC South. So keep that in mind. This is Marcus Washington, MTC.